Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate lawyer and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Today, video number 2 in how to become an attorney. And today we're going to talk about all of the things that are necessary preparation before you ever go to law school. And that includes the things you can take in high school and in college to make it easier and be better prepared when you do go to law school and when you go to take the law school admission test, among other things. So let's jump right into that. First of all, I think one of the most important courses to take is speech and debate. If you're going to do well in law school, you have to be willing to stand up in front of people and talk to them. A lot of people develop microphone fright. Even ham radio operators develop microphone fright, right? They get afraid of talking to people they don't know. You have to be comfortable talking to a group of people, and high school speech and debate classes will help you with that. Now, that does not mean that every lawyer who gets out of law school is going to need to have to stand up and go talk in front of people. They don't. You could be a bond lawyer, and you would never have to go talk in front of people. You could become an attorney who does mergers and acquisitions and fly-specs documents, reading them very carefully to make sure nobody has left anything ambiguous. You could become a contract lawyer, where all you do all day is look at contracts. There are lots of things in the law that you can do, and in fact, for that matter, outside the law, that lawyers are very good at, that you can do without having to stand up and talk in front of people. But if you're going to do well in law school, you are going to have to get good grades in different classes, and one of the grades is probably going to depend on your ability to stand up and engage with a professor on certain cases. One of the reasons that you need to be able to talk in front of a group of people is because in a class like contracts, you're going to get a day where you are going to have to engage with the professor on a particular case. Doesn't matter what the case is, he is going to ask you, or she is going to ask you questions that deal specifically with that case. You're going to have to have read it, you're going to have analyzed it, and you're going to have thought about it a lot. And if you are somehow panicked at the idea of getting up in front of 200 of your closest friends and talking about a case, then you're probably not going to do very well in that. And the purpose behind this exercise is that it is far better to be embarrassed and buffaloed by a mean professor than to fail miserably in front of a client in a courtroom. So it's a necessary preparation to becoming an attorney, and that's why speech and debate courses, particularly in high school, are very helpful because they get you used to the process early of talking in front of people you don't know. And that's very important, particularly for attorneys. Another very important course in high school is American literature. American literature and English literature give you a perspective on writing. It isn't always something that is easily recognized by students at the time that they're going through it, but students learn to write well by reading things that are written well. American literature being one of them, English literature being another. You learn about turns of phrase. You learn about subtle twitches to arguments that make them better. And you do that through reading the classics. All of the greats in literature, even some of the French literary geniuses like Voltaire, when translated, provide a really wonderful way to understand how language communicates emotion, how it communicates passion, and how it can be persuasive and motivating to people. And as a lawyer, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be persuading and motivating people. So those are good things. High school psychology, another good course to take. You're not going to come out of there able to diagnose and treat people with mental illness, but you will come out with a basic understanding of how psychology works. So that's a good thing for a lawyer to have. American history is a great resource. English history to a lesser degree, or I should say history of Western civilization, because I think that's what they call it now, is to a lesser degree important, but most important is American history because American law is patterned on American history. And American history defines some of the greatest events and some of the greatest struggles in our nation's history. The struggle for African Americans to be free, the imprisonment of Japanese Americans during World War II. All of these things are things that give great substance to the law of the United States, not necessarily found in the law books themselves. Because at the time, the United States Supreme Court was writing Korematsu versus the United States. Everybody who was alive at that point understood what happened with the arrest and imprisonment of all of these Japanese families during World War II. And so being aware of that history, being aware, for example, of the Tuskegee experiments, being aware that scientists, supposed scientists anyway, experimented with African American gentlemen in Tuskegee, Alabama, over syphilis, a disease that kills people. You have to understand the issues that were involved, and knowing that history will make you a better lawyer. Now, this is one you're not going to agree with, I'm sure, but geometry. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what do squares and triangles have to do with me learning to be a lawyer? Well, geometry is good not so much for the squares and angles and all that kind of thing. But when I was in high school, oh gosh, I'm beginning to sound like my father now. When I was in high school, they taught this thing called proofs, which is really no more than syllogisms. Now, you can take a separate course called logic, and whether you get this in geometry or whether you get it in a logic course, it is important to understand how to construct a syllogism. You know, A is equal to B, and B is equal to C. Therefore, A is equal to C. That's the basic structure of a syllogism. But it isn't always easy to get that syllogism there. Sometimes there are a lot more steps than 3. So, having had the opportunity to work through that in geometry, or perhaps in a logic course, those are all good things. And all of these courses are courses that are taught in quality high schools. Creative writing or journalism. Now, this is where you really get into the meat of what it means to be a lawyer, because most of our work is done in writing. One of the reasons that law firms have been focused so much on people who write well is because in the last few years, more cases have been decided on the paper than they've been decided by oral argument. Federal courts, particularly the federal courts in Missouri, tend to ignore or don't set oral argument any longer on contested motions. They read the papers and make a decision. A lot of times the lawyers don't even get a chance to be heard other than through the papers that they submit. Journalism is another course besides creative writing that gives you the opportunity to get a command of facts and structure a presentation of facts. It's an excellent course to take. And another one that's probably a lot more fun than either of those would be drama. Taking a course in drama helps you understand how passion and emotion work and how they can be conveyed to others, most of the time through words and actions, but sometimes through words alone. For example, many of you may have seen the video that I did on the eulogy for a dog. And that piece of writing in that particular case has touched the lives of so many people who know dogs and who love dogs. And for that reason, it's very, very important to be able to understand how words and passion and emotion work together. And all of these courses are great courses to do that, and they're all available in quality high schools. And then finally, chess club. I don't recommend necessarily athletics. I think athletics are overvalued in many high schools. Sure, having the best state football team is a great thing for the the people who enjoy football, but people's lives get damaged and destroyed early on in football. So I don't recommend athletics, but I do recommend things like chess club that require you to think and process and look at your opponent's moves 2 or 3 steps ahead so that you know where you're going and you know where you think he's going. Being able to think logically and think through a situation where the only thing that's involved are a couple of plastic chess pieces on a square board is much better than having to do that live in front of a courtroom when you've got an opponent on the other side who's wily and clever. Now let's move on to college. In college, one of the courses you want to take is philosophy. And the reason you want to take philosophy is because philosophy courses tend to be taught by the Socratic method. Now, a lot of you don't understand at this point what the Socratic method is, but the Socratic method is an instructor standing up and asking you questions to get you to think. It's a very important academic exercise, and if you get some exposure to it in college, which I didn't have, if you get some exposure to that in college, it helps you prepare for the way most of the courses are taught in law school, particularly ones like contracts, torts, that sort of thing. Now, courses like civil procedure, a lot of those are taught more the way other, like history courses, are taught. But particularly contracts and torts are taught through the Socratic method. And it's very important to understand how that works. Philosophy therefore, is a really good way to get some exposure to that up front. As I said earlier, American history is a really good way to understand the background and basis for some of the decisions, some of the best decisions and some of the worst decisions made by our United States Supreme Court. I'm thinking of the Dred Scott decision now. And again, if you are active in speech and debate in high school, it is often possible to get a scholarship for speech and debate to college. And speech and debate in college is a level up, and it requires even greater competition. And you have to be much, much better than you were even in high school. And as a result of that, it's sort of like sharpening a pencil with a pocket knife. The rough edges get chipped down until you have a point, and the point becomes the way that you deal with legal problems in the legal profession. So it's a really good idea to take speech and debate because it helps define argumentation skills, which are the crux of everything that lawyers do. Again, I mentioned earlier logic courses. If you hadn't had one in high school, it'd be good to take one in college. I would also encourage you, even if you don't have a humanities requirement, to read the classics. Read the classics of American literature, read the classics of English literature. These are things that are great to do on vacation because they can be enjoyable, educational reading that doesn't have to feel like work. In short, get a good general education. And then finally, I want to talk about one more course that I think is really important to take, and that is storytelling. Not all colleges offer a storytelling course, but those that do, you should certainly consider taking it because what a trial is, whether it's a criminal trial or a civil trial, is a story. You have 12 people, and there are 2 people getting up to tell a story. Now, neither side is telling the story. Both sides are telling a story, and it's up to the jury to figure out which story is the story. And as a result of that, give you a verdict. Knowing how to craft a good story is a really good thing for lawyers who are planning on becoming trial lawyers. Now, as I've mentioned before, I've been a trial lawyer and I've been an appellate lawyer. I very much like being an appellate lawyer better because it's much less stressful. All the mistakes are already made. I know that sounds mean, but it's true. All the mistakes are already made. It's hard to make more. If you really work at it, you can do it, but it is hard to make more mistakes. So The trial lawyer's job is much different than the lawyer's job who's an appellate lawyer, who's a banking lawyer, who's a mergers and acquisitions lawyer, or a bond lawyer, any of those things. And the reason those jobs are different is because there are thousands of different ways to get in trouble in the law and thousands of different ways to get out of trouble in the law. And that's what makes our legal system so great, is that 12 people you don't know can be convinced to do for you what they might otherwise not be willing to do if you have somebody who is good at his skills doing that job. So all of the things that I've talked about here are things that will help you prepare your child if they are getting ready to go to college, getting ready to go to high school, will help you prepare your child to do a great job of being ready for law school. Now, we all want things for our kids, right? We all want them to be happy and successful, and sometimes we want them to get married and have a good life and maybe have children. But what we want for our children is never identical to what they want for themselves. So consider that when you're advising your child, that one of the things that you need to be aware of is they may be interested in law today, and they may decide to become an aerospace engineer tomorrow, and the week after that, they might decide to become a painter like Picasso. You just never know. So all of these things are very helpful, and one of the things that I tell parents all the time is, look, even if you don't want your kid to have all of this exposure and all of these different courses because you don't necessarily think they're going to become a lawyer, this will help you be better prepared to do anything. Having those courses will help you be better to do anything. It's like my friend Zig Ziglar says, having a positive attitude won't let you do anything, but it will help you do everything better than having a negative attitude. So having a good general education won't let you do anything, but it will help you do everything better than you would without a good general education. So hopefully that's been of some use to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe, all the things we ask for you to do. And please, if you know somebody who is interested in going to law school, send them this video. I think it will be helpful to them. And recommend our playlist, which at some point will be built here. I'm probably going to start the playlist today when I upload this video and make it along with the first one, we'll have 2 videos in the playlist. And of course, eventually there'll be numerous other videos in here. But thank you again for watching, and have a marvelous day.
If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.